Sometimes God prefers you walk away than suffer in silence. Isaiah 43 verse 19. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up, do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Anissa heard a loud yell coming from her husband Stephen's office, a tear-jerking cry like he was in anguish. Without a second thought, she dropped the dish in her hand and ran to her husband. There in his office, she found him buckled over in his chair, crying and weeping, as the phone lay sprawled on the floor. Anissa studied her husband for a moment, then walked over to him, gently took him in her arms, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Whatever it is, you know God will always mend it, and I'll always be here for you. I love you," she whispered in his ear. He sobbed harder and harder. Lowering herself, Anissa placed her forehead on his and said, "Tell me what's the matter?" Like a gust of wind, the words blew out of his mouth. "She's dead, my God, she's dead. Liliana is dead." Anissa froze in motion, and it felt as if a freight train had run her over. She felt the anguish and anger as her mind went back a year ago, remembering how she had felt the day she noticed how strange Stephen had become after the doctor had told them she couldn't get pregnant. Stephen was devastated, but months went by, and he became increasingly distant, staying late at work, not wanting to have lunch with Anissa anymore or touch her for that matter. She couldn't help but feel something was off, and the more she asked, the more he denied and said everything was okay. But Anissa couldn't let that feeling go. While at the fertility clinic, Anissa met a sweet nurse who was always a ray of sunshine, helping Anissa during her treatments. Anissa was a bit jealous of her because she had just found out she was 3 weeks pregnant. How she longed to be pregnant and have Stephen's baby, but unfortunately, it wasn't in God's timing yet. Each day Anissa went to the clinic, receiving fertility treatments, and each day felt like a losing battle. She tried to get Stephen to come, but he said it was hopeless, that she would never be able to give him a child. She felt lost and lonely, as if she were the only one who cared about their marriage, because at this point, Stephen had checked out entirely. Anissa, with days and weeks feeling like it was her fault, overheard Stephen on the phone one night. It sounded like he was making plans to meet someone. She listened closely, pretending to be asleep. She heard him get dressed and walk out the front door. After it was safe, Anissa quickly dressed, grabbed her car keys, and hurried to the car. She took out her phone and located Stephen's phone. It was pinging at a nearby motel. She quickly started the car and drove to the location, the Star Motel, the sign read. She saw Stephen's car and parked close by it but far enough away so he wouldn't see her. She sat waiting in the car for 2 hours and then saw Stephen emerge from one of the rooms. He was followed by a woman, blonde, small, and narrow, nothing like Anissa, with her tall, slim, athletic figure. The woman tipped her way up to Stephen, kissing him. Anissa's heart dropped to her chest, and hot tears fell down her face, stinging her cheeks. Anissa didn't know what to do. It was as if her whole body had shut down. She was no longer in control of her body, on autopilot. Somehow, she had gotten out of her car and made her way up to Stephen and the woman, who were now both looking at her, stunned. She looked at them in silence, not saying anything, just stepping into the light to see them both clearly. Stephen began to speak, but Anissa didn't hear a word he said. She was fixated on the woman who stood before her. Shocked and hurt, Anissa couldn't believe it. The sweet nurse, the woman she'd confided in about her infertility, was standing before her, kissing her husband. Anissa's mind raced, and she remembered something even more sinister. She looked down at her belly and thought, "She's carrying my husband's baby." With the coldest tears stinging her eyes, Anissa said, "Liliana?" The cold memory and feeling hit Anissa again as she sat there holding her husband, crying about the death of the woman who almost ruined their marriage. Confusion wrapped around her heart, just like it had the day Stephen had begged and pleaded with her not to leave and to forgive him because he was desperate for a child. It hurt deeply, as if once again she was supposed to swallow her feelings for his sake. Just like he was hurting, she was hurting too. She couldn't have a child, but she was the one who had been cheated on because of it. And now, once again, she was the one being betrayed, but he was the one crying. What was she supposed to do now? Nothing. Pray. Or follow her first mind and slap Stephen into next week. As badly as she wanted to hit him, Anissa began to pray for him, and inside, she died a little. 2 days later, Anissa sat in the bathroom, tears streaming down her face as she listened to Stephen singing and talking to his and Liliana's son. She was hurt, but what kind of heartless monster would deny an innocent baby a home? Anissa pulled herself together, washed her face, and walked out of the bathroom. She joined Stephen and sat back, watching the tiny infant. He looked just like his mother, blonde hair and hazel green eyes. Anissa knew she shouldn't be angry with the baby, but her anger flared inside her. Not only did this woman have space in her husband's heart, but now she had left behind a painful reminder, a child who looked just like her. It was as if Liliana had purposely left the child to taunt her. Anissa became angrier by the minute, so she left the room and lay down. As she lay in bed, she heard Stephen's loud footsteps coming down the hall. He stopped in front of the door and said, "How long do you plan on laying around? I need your help with the baby. I can't take care of him by myself. It's not his fault, his mother and I fell in love the wrong way. He needs you, Anissa. I need you. Please don't let your jealousy and hatred for Liliana rob him of a beautiful childhood." Anissa looked Stephen in his eyes as tears ran down his face, yet again ignoring the pain she felt inside. Of course, it was Stephen's show, his grief over his mistress, his pain. Why not make her suffering less important than his? She must have been the jealous, vile woman. Anissa sat up, held her tongue, and said, "What can I help you with?" Stephen walked over, placed the small child in Anissa's arms, and said, "I'm going out. You mind watching him until I come back?" Before Anissa could reply, Stephen was already down the hall, grabbing his keys. Anger washed over her again, and she looked down at the tiny smiling face looking up at her. She wished he wasn't such a bright light, then maybe her anger and resentment wouldn't feel so guilt-ridden. But that wasn't the case. Anissa held the tiny child to her chest and nurtured him like he was her own. She fed him, played with him, bathed him, and put him to sleep. She even prayed over him. This went on for 6 months. Stephen would leave her with his child, stay out all night, come home drunk and mean. He would belittle Anissa and make her feel like she was going crazy. Anytime she mentioned him not being a father to his son, he would guilt-trip her into believing she was just being jealous and punishing his son because of his love for his mother. It became increasingly difficult to love and support Stephen when his obsession and grief over his mistress were all that showed. 2 months later, the baby could walk now. He was sweet and adorable, but it didn't stop Anissa from still feeling resentment in her heart toward him. She knew it was wrong, but how could she be so angry at this sweet boy and lie next to the man who truly caused her pain? She couldn't make sense of it. She was so tired of Stephen. She didn't know what to do anymore. Her heart said stay, but something else told her it was time to leave. Maybe that's what she would do, find the baby's family and leave. She decided to start tomorrow. The next morning, Anissa prayed, asking God to help her find a home for the baby, a place where he would be loved and taken care of. She grabbed her laptop and searched for Liliana's family but found none. She grabbed the baby and visited the fertility clinic, asking if Liliana had any family who could take care of the child, but the people there told her Liliana was an orphan with no family. This was nerve-wracking for Anissa, and she became hopeless about ever being able to leave. She drove herself and the baby home, fed him, placed him in his playpen, and sat down, exhausted. She was going to leave as soon as she found his family, but there was no family besides the drunk narcissist who barely looked at the child, except to get some twisted vision of his mother and dump the responsibility on her. In thought and sorrow, Anissa began to cry and pray, asking God for help. When she heard "Mama," she thought she was going crazy. But then she heard it again. She looked up and saw the baby boy extending his arms toward her and saying, "Mama." She cried, picked him up, and said, "It's okay, Jacob. Mama's here." You and me are going to find a better place than here." She hugged and kissed his forehead, and for the first time since holding him, the resentment was gone. All she felt was immense love for the tiny creature. Like a dawning moment, it hurt that the baby she had prayed for and the loving home for this child were right there. It was here. She smiled, kissed the child on the forehead, grabbed her coat and keys, and hurried to the court to file an emergency custody order. 2 weeks later, she received a response. When Stephen stormed into the house with 2 thick envelopes, furious, he roared, "Not only are you trying to leave me, but you're trying to take my son away? Are you crazy?" Anissa said no and simply picked the child up, saying, "See you in court tomorrow." That night, she thought Stephen would try something stupid, so she kept the baby in the room with her, with the door locked. When morning came, she dressed herself and the child, said a prayer, and went to court. While waiting for the judge's decision, Anissa watched her now ex-husband twirling his fingers and thought, "How far has he changed from the man I once loved?" But as quickly as the thought came, it left as the judge announced her ruling. Anissa's heart raced as she heard the judge consider both her and Stephen's testimonies and evidence. He came to the conclusion that Anissa was the legal guardian of Jacob Israel Declare, Anissa's maiden name. Anissa jumped with joy and praise as she picked her son up, gathered the paperwork, hurried to her car, and drove home. There, she grabbed their packed bags, hit the road to better pastures, and looked back in the rearview mirror. She saw her adorable son smiling and waving at her. She smiled in return. "By the grace of God, you are blood of my blood, flesh of my flesh, spirit of my spirit," she whispered, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and love.